Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. We know things are really different and probably quite busy, so
Yeah.
we appreciate it. So to just get started, we're hoping that you could explain your journey to where you are now and kind of your education and background experience.
I went to OT school way back in the early 90s when you only needed a bachelor's degree. And I was a generalist OT, worked in rehab and acute care for most of my career, probably at least 21 years of my career, of my 27. At that point, I started getting bored. I wasn't challenged. So because OT is such a wide expanse of a career, I actually took a weekend course and it was from Mary Warren. It had to do with, and I think my employer, Spectrum Health, was putting it on. It had to do with head injury and vision impairment, I think. I don't think it was the elderly and vision impairment, but it kind of got me thinking. And during that time, she also talked about her low vision graduate certificate program that she created down at University of Alabama in Birmingham. Mm-hmm. And I swore I never would go back to school. And it got to the point where I kind of got sick of the whole productivity thing and the same thing day in and day out. And I started to question, because at the time, and I don't know if things are a little different in acute care now, but people were going in and out super fast. But I even wondered how many people really remembered what I did, because a lot of them were like an orthopedic surgery or something. So they were all on pain meds, and it's like, did they even remember what I taught them? So I felt like some of my work was, is not challenging. So I decided to apply to the program. It was late 2012, and I was accepted for the low vision graduate certificate at UAB. It's an online program, and I started January 14. And I think in 15 I was done. Maybe I'm messing it up. It might have been 13 that I started it in January. I was done in middle of 14. And it was a weakness. We didn't get near the vision background that I think a lot of the students like yourselves are getting embedded in your instruction now. We just learned about vision mostly having to do with strokes or head injury through our neuro courses. We knew about in our general, like learning the medical conditions of what macular degeneration is, what glaucoma is, but it never was embedded in the thought process of, you need to really look at this stuff and assess it and include it in part of your thought process as you're making your goals and your adaptations. And so from there, I just fell in love with it. And I graduated with a graduate certificate, and I decided to go on for my master's. And so my master's focus was all, it's learning some of the stuff you probably are learning that I never got, where they've kind of pushed the focus on occupational science and some of that kind of things, and some of the updates to the ethics, updates to the whole occupational profile that we never got. I mean, that was not even generated back when I was in school. So it kind of helped me get up to date in that way, but also my thesis was based around a low vision project too. So, and in the process of that, I was doing some volunteering here at the Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired in Grand Rapids, and just to get hours, because I was thinking about getting a specialty through AOTA in it, but you needed like 600 hours of working directly with people, not necessarily me doing OT treatment, but even helping with screenings and things like that. So I was doing that, and my the head person who was heading up the clinic actually decided to retire from here after 35 years and move closer to home. So he now runs one in Kalamazoo at Western's clinic. That's a lot smaller, but so I had like a whole week to get a crash course from him. 35 years of what went on here, and it was taking on a role not just OT and developing my what my job is, because they didn't have an OT here, but also taking on his role too, which was huge shoes to fill. So that's kind of, I had some family members that had vision impairment, not as they got older and things, and it always intrigued me. I grew up by the Blind Center down in Kalamazoo, and I saw people cane training in my neighborhood. So as a kid, I always kind of had it in the back of my mind, but I chose to go to OT instead of the blindness training, and so here we are.
Awesome.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role at the Association of the Blind and Visually Impaired?
We are a nonprofit. We get a lot of our funding from donations mainly, but what our service is advocacy for the blind, helping people. We have a low vision clinic that we have individuals who maybe have developed vision loss for a whole host of reasons, whether it's neuro or just eye diseases or whatever, that they can spend time with a low vision optometrist, and I work closely with them in the clinic. And the orders that are generated from that, there are very specific rules by Medicare that OT can provide treatment in low vision, and then we deal with the insurance of which ones cover it and which ones don't. But if I get an order, then I can go and see the client at home for a Part B Medicare visit. So it's kind of the same insurance that somebody would use in an outpatient setting, going to a clinic, but it's allowable for us to go to the home and do it. And I also, so I've kind of helped with and continue to coordinating the clinic, some of the operations of that. I keep track of the stock and magnifiers. I do orders. I help with screening in the clinic now. We've had one person that one of my coworkers decided not to come back post furlough and decided to retire. So we're short one, and we've got one. My other helper is coming back from furlough on Monday, so I've been by myself.
Wow.
So we're just starting to get things up and running. I haven't been able to do home visits for a little bit, but in generally, yeah, home visits, people might come to the clinic here to see devices. There's some bigger electronic magnifiers that I can't easily just drag to somebody's house unless we're sure they want to try it. We do instruction for the blind. My coworkers have a master's degree in a lot of the blindness techniques, whereas mine's more low vision with a magnifier. So together, we're a partnership. They know Braille, I don't. They know more of if somebody is younger and born completely blind, how do you teach them how to cook and all that. So as an OT, I kind of generally know how to adapt, and going through my training helps, but we tag team and teach people how to deal with their computers, their phones, with and without vision, with little vision. But also we provide cane training. So there's a whole other master's degree for orientation and mobility that's also taught at Western. And we have some individuals who work here who can provide that. They also have some contracts with the school systems and do cane training for the kiddos during school and getting from class to class and how do they cross streets and things. But there's also adults that might have a vision loss, and then through the clinic, we generate, or phone calls if somebody suddenly lost vision, then they can go out and teach them how to get around in their house, get around in their community, deal with the bus system. We have a social worker or two who help lead our support groups and deal with a huge element that happens sometimes with people where they develop depression or anxiety. Not that I can't deal with that, but we need a specialist, and then they can kind of focus in on that. Otherwise, I'd get drowned out with dealing with that element of it and not the OT piece. So mine is definitely, the OT part is providing some ideas for adaptation, and it really melds nicely with what we do. It's all about adapting, and also it helps me knowing a lot of the medical conditions. Some of these girls haven't learned that through their master's degree or their prior degrees, whereas we have to know that stuff. So if I have a Parkinsonian patient, we had one this week, and I know kind of what to look at. She had a lot of problems freezing and things like that, and we were talking about driving with the doctor, and yeah, She was thinking she could drive, and there's a whole other host of things. So, and driving, I do dabble in that a little bit. We generally have some other specialists that are in town that we refer to. But I do have some capabilities of doing some screenings with my OT skills and what I've learned in low vision. There's some special telescope glasses for driving that some individuals have potential to use, not everybody. So
Sounds like there's a ton of services offered through a lot of partnerships and working together.
It's a lot for a little place.
I guess when patients typically first start, how are they usually evaluated? And are there any specific assessments that you would recommend someone who's just starting know for this setting?
For OT only? Is that what you're talking about? Well, I think it's good for even, because there's a difference between generalist OTs doing low vision stuff and specialists. But there are some good basic things to know if, I don't know how much we really touched on in school. Maybe you guys are getting more of it, but knowing how do you figure out what somebody's vision is in general, with an eye chart. Or if you were in acute care, you can pinch hit and do things with, can they see the clock? Can they see, that kind of thing. But just keeping in mind that vision is important. Some people don't even assess that. See how their eyes are tracking, if they're able to follow your finger, if they're able to converge and, cross their eyes a little bit. And if the convergence is way out here, then, there's some other issues. But also knowing when to refer to a place like ours. It's not necessarily should be put on you. You should be able to, if you're a generalist, focus on the main task at hand and make sure to tie them into resources, or you guys calling that resource and asking some more questions. There's some easy adaptations that you would be able to do that are, pretty knowledge you might have learned in school too. There is a good quick screening tool that is on the University of Alabama, Birmingham Low Vision Graduate Certificate website. I believe it's under resources or something on one of the tabs off to the left side, but it was developed for any OT to use. It's called the SRAFEP, and I can't remember every single, but it's a low vision. A girl who went through my coursework with me, that was one of her projects for Mary Warren to revamp it, and she did some additional testing, and it kind of boosted the evidence of using that test. And it's something that is very easy to use. It's kind of got a scale from 0 to, I think it's 0 to 4, where 0 is unable to do. There's also the ability to put an N for they don't even ever do that. Like maybe a woman doesn't ever shave, even her legs anymore. That's one of, but it does go through ADL elements. It kind of dives into telephone use and writing tasks and reading and that kind of thing. So it might be worth looking at, and it generates a score. And I think there's some other elements in there. Somebody might have made a spreadsheet that can help you plug in the numbers, and it can generate even a G code score. I know Medicare was using that at some point, but it does help, at least with people with vision, and it helps you develop your goals along with your occupational profile. Another one that somebody mentioned to me was the reading assessment inventory. It's very simple. If you're focusing more on just the vision part, and it's a couple simple questions of what level of school did they go through, and are they frustrated with their reading lately, and that kind of thing. So it just kind of generates more of a qualitative, I'm frustrated with how I'm reading, and yes, it's gotten worse in the last couple months, and that kind of thing. If you need that, I can try and scan it in or find it and send it to you. But the SRAFEP, I'm sure, is on the UAB website, so you could look for that.
Cool. That one sounds awesome, yeah.
Other ones, I don't know, you'd need a little bit more training, and it really wouldn't make too much sense. It's more specialists use it, so.
So, what are some of your commonly used interventions? I know you said you don't always bring a lot of the equipment into the homes, but have any of the advancements in like vision training tools changed your practice at all?
So vision therapy or training is different than what I do. I don't dabble too much in doing eye exercises and all of that. And honestly, there's evidence, some evidence out there that it helps, but there's also optometrists actually know a lot more about it than OTs. And so it's a little gray area with a scope of practice between us. And so I guess it depends on where you work, and as long as you're working under a good optometrist or a doctor who knows that stuff, in my mind, you're okay with doing those kind of exercises and things. But if you're doing it on your own and trying different lenses and stuff, that's getting a little gray, and your practice is at risk. So the things I do is I actually have a lot of stuff that I can bring out to the house. It's the bigger equipment that I don't. So there are some video magnifiers that are bigger where it looks like a computer screen, and you can put reading material under it, and it's got a camera, and then you can turn a dial and easily increase it. So the reason why those are helpful, even though they're expensive, is there's some people that they need to change the background contrast color. They can't just look at something like you and I do. There's too much glare, or everything's washed out, or their eye condition just causes it so that they can't read the letters very crisply. I had one lady yesterday, same thing. I brought a bunch of hand magnifiers out to her on Tuesday, and I kept going up in power, and it didn't matter how strong, she got to the highest power, and she goes, I can see the letter, but it just looks like they all are wearing little fuzzy coats. I can't tell the difference between the letters. They just start melding together, or kind of like fur is on them, she said. So when I brought the electronic magnifier out, which she liked the portable version, which is it looks like a little cell phone. But it's a very dedicated magnifier, and you can switch the background colors and things. She could read those letters when I reversed it, so it had a black background and a white letter, kind of like a lot of our apps are going to on the phone. But this can do that to any reading material that you set it on or hold it over. So that kind of stuff, I deal with that stuff, but there's simple things like there's bump dots out there, which are little rubber stickers that have different levels of, some are square, some are round, some are big, small, to mark appliances so that people can feel the buttons on like a microwave that's all flat. So that we know which their favorite buttons are, so they can push it. And their stove and their washer dryer do that. We have hand magnifiers. So some people take a hand magnifier home from the low vision clinic with the doctor, and the doctor kind of makes me a list of things to try beyond that. So lamps, lighting is huge, getting them, educating them on directional lighting and good quality lighting for what their eye condition is, because different hues of light works for different people based on their eye condition and their preference. Tints, like sunglasses of different colors, can make a big difference for glare management depending on the person and the eye condition. So sometimes I've got that in my bag, but a lot of it is already, like I said, if they go through a low vision clinic, the doctor's kind of making me a list, and then I bring, at least some of that stuff, and we start trying what works. And it's after I've done the assessment, the SRA-FEP, to figure out what really, sometimes things have changed since they talked to the doctor, and I find out they really don't care about cooking like what the family was saying. They just want to be able to read, or maybe they don't want to read anymore. They just want to be able to, warm up their coffee. So sometimes visit turns into something totally different, but the things I take are generally magnifiers, and then little adaptive devices. And then if they want like a talking watch or things like that, then I might add that into the mix. There's all sorts of things out there, and some of even like online low vision sites that you guys are able to purchase as well for your clients. So, yeah.
That's really cool that you're able to go into the natural environment and, help them, as opposed to if you're just educating them in the clinic.
That is huge. And I know that there's a lot of places that have a low vision clinic in more medical entities, and they don't allow their therapists to go do the home visit. They want the patient to come in. And that is a huge, I learned so much by going to their house. And I can see the trip hazards. I mean, all the OT stuff. I even kind of peek in their bathroom because I care about, can they even see the edge of their tub? Do we need to mark it with some tape? That stuff. There's stairs to the basement. You can see how, the family is interacting and leaving stuff, in places, and how their kitchen's set up, all that stuff. So yeah, it is very helpful to go, even though it is a big time sink, but it is helpful. Yeah.
Have you noticed any certain barriers in your practice?
Well, I think the history of low vision rehab, and the reason why I keep saying Mary Warren is she's kind of like she's retired now, but she was one of my professors, but also helped pass some of the legislation along with some ophthalmologists in the country to allow Medicare and other insurances to cover for OT to do this back in 2007. And so during that time, I think on that same bill, there was also some verbiage that OT wasn't in it, but like my coworkers, the CVRTs, the Certified Vision Rehab Therapists, and the Orientation Mobility Therapists and Specialists, and there's a Certified Low Vision Therapist. All of those individuals, they have a separate master's degree generally, and then they take a certification exam. They were written into this bill, and then when the bill was worked on, suddenly it flipped, and they looked at, oh, well, those people aren't medical people. They don't have a medical degree like OT does, and OTs know this stuff. So OT got put in place of those people. So they kind of got outed. So I think coming into this place, the Association for the Blind being an OT, it was a little bit, I had to break down some barriers because they saw me as, oh great, the OT who can go out and make the money instead of, us having to try and ask for money all the time or get money, funding and grants and things like that. There was a rub. And so some of, I was accepted, but I think it did take some work to get past some of that. And there's still a lot of that out there, depending on if I went to a conference where a majority of the people had the other degree, I think I would feel the tension in the room. Oh, you're an OT.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Have you in your practice seen any implications of increased use of technology and screens on vision?
Yes. I see as people are getting older and using smartphones and technology as their usual device to communicate with, drop in their landlines, using computers for emails and things before they develop their vision loss, they tend to rely on that. And I actually am happy when people say that they have that stuff. Oh, I've got an iPhone. Not that iPhones, I mean, even if they had an Android, we'd figure it out. But yes, I use an iPad or I do this or that. Then it's at least a gateway to something that's pretty powerful. There's some pretty neat magnifier abilities just with the phone or iPad or, the computer nowadays. Microsoft and Apple started it, but I think Microsoft has really come a long way in the last couple of years with some of their background ability with settings and changing the background colors and making the cursor bigger. Things that people used to have to pay big money to have a separate program put on their computer. The only thing it doesn't do real great on is reading to you, consistently the voiceover kind of speaking and reading the screen. That you almost really need a dedicated other program on for it to work consistently for everything. And that's special training and everything else. However, if somebody walks in and says they're using that, it's way easier than the flip phone people or the landline people, because with that, they're usually adverse to using some of these electronic magnifiers, which is the only thing we can gravitate to that would work, even if it's a very simple control. It's super easy controls meant for like the 85, 90-year-old people with just 3 buttons that you can even touch and mess with. They tend to shy away from any of that. Anything to do with technology, they just shut it down. So it's positive. I think it's helpful.
Good, okay.
Good to hear. What ages do you work with, and how do you see the OT process differently between the different ages?
We see pretty much all ages. I would say school age, so 6 up to, we've had 100 and, I don't even know I thought we had a 103-year-old lady once.
Wow.
So, but for OT, for the most part, it's usually the elderly that I'm dealing with. That's what most of our clients are. I would say they're over 50, over 60. But those are the people that have more of the aging conditions with the eyes that I have to deal with. And they're the ones that have the insurance that I can treat under. I do treatments without that sometimes and use some of the grant monies and things like that. So I can't say that I never see the younger folks. But a lot of times how it's parsed out is the kids through school age generally are getting this kind of training. They may come through our clinic so that we can kind of try different things that should be used at school. But all the intermediate school districts by law are supposed to provide a teacher for the visually impaired and orientation mobility training if they need it. They go through an IEP process and it's written into that. And so they work with those students throughout the school year, and a lot of those techniques that they learn how to use the computer and enlarge things and stuff with they call them TCVIs, teacher for the visually impaired, is carried over then at home. And as they get into college, then they're supposed to transition them. Now, if they're legally blind, there's a state entity that will help them transition into employment. And so we might again see those people come through our clinic, but it's the counselors that work for the state and deal with the employment aspect and things that are purchasing those devices and doing the training and that kind of thing, unless we're asked to do that. Then we have the middle-aged people that might have some sort of stroke event, head injury or something. A lot of them don't have tons of money, but if it's, related to a car accident or things, sometimes that gets covered. Or they're dealing with, can I go back to drive? And so those people I tend to sometimes deal with, but like I said, elderly are probably the most. And it's mainly driven because of how I can be reimbursed. So a lot of times my coworkers are dealing with the younger people more because they're needing more of the Braille and the lifelong training that's needed from them in the way of the ADLs or the complete blindness techniques. And then I'm dealing more with the people that have had some vision at least for part of their life and then adapting to that.
Okay.
So we've learned a little bit about vision in class through our research for preparing for this, and we found that they have the hierarchical model where you have to learn the basic skills that are required and to build up to the more complex like cognitive skills. Do you have any examples of that you've seen with your low vision clients?
Probably more with the kids than the adults. It's because the adults generally, if they've had healthy eyes already, they're just kind of regressing in that a little bit, and then you're just helping to prop them up so that they can go up the ladder again. Kids, and I hear about it more than experience it since I don't work directly with them, but we do have some summer program that goes on here and things that my coworkers work on. What we find is that it depends on how the child is raised. If the parents are real sheltering and not allowing them to experience some of that lower basic stuff, then you're not going to get to the higher, you know, they tend to lag in their cognitive and problem solving and everything else, the higher executive functions, because they're not pushed to do that. Parents have, you know, coddled them. Oh, you can't see because you're blind, so I'm going to lead you everywhere, instead of, I got to get them, you know, why don't we get you, and why don't you go with your instructor and learn how to cross the street? It is a scary thing, even for a parent with kids that have normal vision, to teach them how to cross the street. But some parents, and it tends, you know, I see a lot more in these kind of kids, but the other caveat is some of these kids also have other learning disabilities along with it. And so I think, you know, it really depends where, you know, the cognitive piece sometimes is never totally gained because they may be a lower functioning individual anyways. But yes, vision is developed generally up till age 12. And if they're not spending time as a kid, you know, if they're doing lots of screen stuff and all that, they do lag behind too. If they don't work on their eye-hand coordination, it all stems into, I think I've seen more kids of my kids are late teens, early 20s, but I saw more kids in their age group, I think because they've been on screen so much. I wonder if the reason why they don't feel comfortable doing like driver's training right at 16. I mean, I was jonesing to get out there, and I don't know of too many kids in my class that didn't do it. There's a lot more kids now that are freaked out by sitting behind the wheel, and it does take a lot of eye-hand coordination to do left turns and to scan and that kind of thing. And you get some of it on the computer, but it's limited to just your screen. It's not the big world, like they're not getting outdoor time and things like that. So I think all of that plays into development. And, you know, if some of the eye conditions haven't been addressed, whether it's due to low income or whether the parents just chose not to follow through with some recommended surgeries or therapy treatments or patching, then that also plays into it. Their eyes aren't going to be doing what they need to do in order to advance, be able to read, and then gain that cognition too through school. So it all is together. I mean, it's so connected.
Mm-hmm. What resources do you use to stay up to date on evidence-based practice in your setting, and have you taken any recent continuing ed courses that have stood out to you?
I'm trying. I haven't been successful this year because of all this COVID stuff and being so busy, but one of my personal goals was trying to dabble a little more in diabetic and kind of learning more about diabetes instruction, not to be a specialist like a diabetes instructor, but there are some coursework that you can take that's a little below that, just so that I can be up to date. A lot of our people lose their vision because of diabetes or have limited, and then they're asking me, what meters are good and how do I do this? And so that's my own personal piece, but I generally every year or two I go to the NVision conference, which is a huge, well, now they split it up into 2 coasts, but I don't know if you guys have heard about it. It's a low vision blindness conference that brings together eye professionals. So everybody from ophthalmologists and optometrists to OTs. There's CVR, you know, all the blindness folks, some of them, but not, I would think it's more medical folks. It's got a lot of research. You can sit in on some of the newer research that's coming out. Then obviously they have the new technology that's coming out so that we can see that and to get together. So I'm thinking about, if I don't have a conflict with some other things in my life, they are doing it online this summer, the one that I'm thinking about attending, which was supposed to be in Ohio. I also try to keep up on, I'm really active with the UAB, the graduate certificate program. They have a Facebook page. We have another page that is just for the graduates that they created within the UAB learning platform that we can participate in and share stuff, new things that came out, or, you know, what is the evidence on this? I haven't done a whole lot of, I don't love reading a lot of research articles, even though I should. But if there's something that comes across, you know, that I see in AOTA or the practice magazine from AOTA that's about vision or having to do with that, I definitely read that. So
how do you advocate for your patients, and how can we as future OTs advocate for your practice setting?
I think you know, the biggest thing is trying, if we're dealing with either a living community where they're at, or with family members or things like that, I just try or even a rehab. I've been called over to Mary Free Bed a couple times, and that is now our parent company. We're an independent subsidiary of them, but there's been a couple times where I've gotten calls from home health therapists and things like that, and just, you know, they want to just kind of hand over the client to me, and they're actively still seeing the client, and I try and explain to them, we can't both bill for OT at the same time, but there are some things that general OTs can do that are very simple, like enlarging things and using the bump dots and kind of thinking through, how could I make their medication management a little easier? Is there a box out there that has bigger numbers, or can we use colors, or, you know, and using our, you know, our skills that we have already to change some simple things. Marking, you know, to make sure people can see, you know, with higher contrast, certain dangerous areas in their home, or lighting for the stairways and that kind of stuff. So I encourage, I would like, I do a lot of that for my clients, and advocating at where they live, you know, you guys can do this. It's not, you know, they all think, oh, they're blind, and really they have residual vision. You can't think of them as completely blind, but trying to get them to understand how to allow the person more independence, but helping them when they still are going to need it, all the, you know, certain tasks. But I challenge the regular therapist to just, sometimes if somebody has completely lost their vision, to me, it's kind of like, what do you do when somebody has lost their leg? You have to think about all of your treatment options without that leg. They're going to be in a wheelchair, or they're using crutches or something, but we're used to doing that, thinking about the appendage that isn't working, or the arm that is hemiparetic or whatever. Think about closing your eyes and, how would I do this if I had absolutely no vision, or understanding where their vision's at and using the vision they have left with cues or color or whatever else, and your voice, and getting them, you know, to the bathroom and being able to do their ADLs. And part of it is us being cheerleaders, like we do for everything else. If somebody's depressed about having a stroke, if they're, you know, they can't see very well, it's up to us to try and prove, yes, you can get up and do this stuff, you know, little bits at a time. So I think I would encourage, you know, reach out when you have problems and you need help, but don't discount the skills that you already have as an OT. It's another facet that we need to look at of a loss or something that's not working that we can adapt.
That kind of answers our next question, which is, what advice did you have about working in this population? And that's really good advice for us to remember. Do you have anything else you can think of on that question, or?
I don't think so.
Is there any other information about your field or what you do that you'd like to share that's important?
I guess just, you know, for people to be up on, you know, if you have an opportunity to get a little bit of vision background. I know that GVSU is laid out different than Western, where they have more of a dedicated class, and I understand from Dr. Slaybaugh and from Dr. Fortuna that they kind of embed the vision stuff along. You guys learn it more by the age span, correct?
Yeah.
So, but asking questions about it, and if, you know, think through that kind, you know, and reach out, find wherever your practice area is that you land, find out in your area where there's a place like this. You're going to need to know if, you know, if you've got to be the person to say, So you're now going from, you're with a cane, but you can't see around the room. I think you're going to need some cane training, which they kind of have to be off the walker a little bit, but O&Ms can still help if they have a walker, because they're going to need some sort of mapping. But most of these adaptations, you need some good cognition. So you can't assume somebody with pretty impaired cognition is going to be able to glom onto a lot of this stuff. There might be some simple pieces of it, but put in your toolbox of references as you develop your practice, add in finding where the low vision or the blindness center is in your area that would serve your clients, so that you can reach out to them if you need to.
All right. I believe that is all of our questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much for meeting with us. I feel like
Problem.
you really shared some good information.
Thank you. We've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Good. Well, say hi to the two professors that I know.
For
Yeah,
sure.
will do.